So we're talking about this individual has doubled their testosterone levels, fundamentally. Masturbation is the most profitable business. I had this thought today regarding how one activity can lead to so much profit for businesses for various different sectors. Let's get straight to the point. These are the lists of an individual on Reddit who has collaborated and corroborated many different industries that they believe profit off fundamentally our weakness. You know, a lot of people do not enjoy me speaking perhaps from a spiritual perspective, in that, well, I should say first and foremost, if you're an atheist, you're probably not in good company here, my friend. But if you are of some faith, then, you know, you are welcome. The atheists are welcome as well, but I'm probably not going to convince you if you can't enjoy the splendor of God out in the world today. I know that aspect is real because you see the devil working here. And the first one this individual has highlighted is of course the adult entertainment industry. Now, you know, I follow some very interesting journalists on Twitter or the X platform who go into detail in these areas behind the scenes, and these industries propagate and promote some of the most horrendous lower forms of life on this. You're talking about people who profit off child trafficking, pedophilia, all these kinds of things. They all stem from this industry. Like, you're talking the lowest forms of life that I referred to. This act of voyeurism, because that's what it is, it's an act of pleasing oneself in relation to seeing, you know, other people pleasing themselves, is a Pandora's box that we never should have opened. And the real scary, satanic and demonic part of this is its availability. You would have heard me say many times that the effects this kind of material has on the brain is no different than Class A drugs like heroin and cocaine. And yet it seems to me that most people, or that there's a lack of regulation and lack of attention to the fact that there are children out there 10 years old getting access to iPhones and smartphones, and they can have access to material from the convenience of their pocket that can stimulate their brains in the same way as these Class A drugs. And yet there appears to be some absolutely abhorrent and naive perspectives in relation to how this kind of material is being regulated. I mean, I certainly, you know, if I bring children into this world, would have something to say about how they're allowing to interface, because it's like this is a crystal ball. You know, it's beyond. I think sometimes we can normalize this technology because it's become so pervasive in our culture. But we're talking about something that has the ability to change our very consciousness, that scatters and diminishes our consciousness, which from a spiritual perspective is the beginning of some of these demonic satanic entities entering our psyche. And in a simpler way, God is in the gathering of consciousness, the devil is in the dissipating of that kind of consciousness. And you know, when you look at what we're interfacing with material that is dissipating consciousness, that is bringing us back into a limbic system response and making us more impulsive and not actually upregulating and strengthening the aspects in the prefrontal cortex. And we're going to go into, I've got a scary thing in a moment that I'm going to show you about how when you start to remain continent sexually, how your testosterone goes up naturally. I've made videos on this before, but I've got real data to show you, not just on this one, but previous videos I've done before. So that's coming up. Let's talk about the prostitution aspect of these things. Adult material distorts thinking. It creates unrealistic standards of intercourse, and to fulfill them, people have to rely on prostitutes. Yeah, I think, you know, when you're talking about the dating market nowadays, I think it's 66% of men are single now. I think it's a difficult multifactorial equation that we have to be sensitive towards, but I think part of that equation is men having unrealistic expectations about what a woman is now, because they've been absolutely destroying their psyche. They have been bashing their consciousness up against a unparalleled, unprecedented, unachievable and attainable form of hyper-sexualized, hyper-feminine characteristics that are, you know, mainly fake. You're talking about with the rising of AI, things like that. Your brains are being stimulated in a way that a real woman perhaps can't even hope to achieve. You know, of course, I'm not out of sympathy with, women have their unrealistic expectations on men as well. But one of the things that you'll notice, which is quite comical, in my personal opinion, when you start to become more continent, is average women seem, more attractive because you're becoming more sensitive to a natural kind of feminine. A lot of you laugh at me because I find collarbones on women attractive, like dainty little feminine collarbones, the dimples in the small of the back, as opposed to, there are some men a lot younger than me, right, in their late teens, in their late 20s, and they're having to use Viagra because they have just absolutely destroyed their pleasure responses in their brain because of this kind of material. And maybe you can make an argument that I'm too sensitive in that regard, but I would rather have the former problem than the latter problem. Other online services, we talk about OnlyFools being the best example, taking advantage of men nowadays unable to find a mate. Sites like this giving false hope of finding intimacy. Yeah, that word, that's the really scary thing, because it's not just, I touch a lot upon this idea of, pleasure and indulging and overindulgence in that particular response, but with the rise of OF, it's very interesting to note that it's not just an absence of pleasure in men's life, it's an absence of intimacy, it's an absence of connection. And there are so many men paying these women hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month, not just because of the sexual dimension, but also the intimacy. The fact that, again, most of them are feeling lonely and they want to connect on some kind of level with a human being. And the heartbreaking aspect of that is they don't realize that most of that is outsourced to somebody else, meaning a lot of men think that they're texting these women, but they're actually texting some fat old bloke that she's hired in a poorer country to keep up the facade that there's actually intimacy going on there. Sorry, that's the red pill truth of it all. I mean, what do you think? You think if your favorite OF creator has got 100,000 men paying her a subscription fee, that she's the one replying to you in the messages? It's not happening. Not happening. Sorry to break your hearts. Wow, we should have no men like that in here. The derma industry. So this is an interesting insight into the assumption that masturbation leads to hair fall, poor skin, health, acne, etc. Why? Because that's the case in this individual's personal experience. I'm not saying that hair fall couldn't be genetic and it's all in our control, but I absolutely believe that self-pleasuring accelerates this aging process. And of course, there are going to be these superficial and health and beauty industries that can take advantage of men. I actually met with some women probably before Christmas, and they were in the kind of health and beauty industry, and how she was saying that most of her clients are actually men coming to them for, Botox in the forehead to get rid of wrinkles. They're getting rid of like bags under the eye. They're having cheek filler. They're having buccal fat removal. They're having all these really expensive things being done as a consequence. And these guys are in their 30s, she's saying this is strange, what's happening to men nowadays, and they're becoming more obsessed with, how they're appearing. And it's remarkable to me that that's the case. When you're expelling life from yourself every single day, how can you not expect yourself to become the metaphor of death in your appearance? You're slowly dying, you're slowly killing yourself, you're slowly voiding yourself of life. That's fundamentally what's happening to you. The pharma industry, similarly, daily masturbation leads to lower T levels, which makes men opt out for TRT and anything else that may come in combination with that to help the absence of poor masculine characteristics in you. And here's what I wanted to show you. This is a lab results for somebody who's gone through retention for around 4 months. So I'll just go through the description first and foremost. After seeing the first one upvoted, because there's been similar posts like this where people post their testosterone lab results month after month, this individual got inspired. They wanted to do the same. They wanted to know what effects it would have on them. So the experiment was attended for longer, but the final stage, I forgot about the experiment and released. He measured it through the salvia isn't the word, salvia is a drug, saliva lab tests. The first picture is the first lab result that came in right after day 1. The other ones have been measured in 2-month intervals. So I'm not sure what country this is in here. So normally they're in nanograms per deciliter, but we've got picograms per milliliter here. So 58, I believe. And then 2 months after, from 58 to 96 picograms per milliliter. And then after 4 months, 108. 0.5 picograms per milliliter. So we're talking about this individual has doubled their testosterone levels fundamentally. What I'll also do, if I have the time, I'll perhaps put on this video an overlay of me going through an individual who had achieved similar results. And I probably did this video around a year ago, but these posts are getting more and more common in the subreddit. How men are, these aren't small changes. Like, you're talking about, okay, somebody takes ashwagandha and cycles ashwagandha, they may get an increase of testosterone by around 10 to 20%. But if somebody is celibate for 3 months, their testosterone doubles. It doubles, goes up 200%. So, you know, we have to start really consciously thinking about this as a very viable solution for a lot of men. And, you know, if you look at the comments here, chiming in, my test went higher than the average range of normal within 4.5 months of retention, and I'm in my mid-40s. I'm a believer 100%. OP is saying, no wonder the world tries to keep men from being hooked on this PMO cycle. And the reason why is back to our first friend here and some of the comments. It's not about money, it's a spiritual and political warfare to make men weak, to destroy the family unit, and to keep us drained and subdued. It's to keep men compliant. It's to keep them nerfed. You know, one of the examples I give is, if you have a male dog and you get it neutered, the reason you neuter it is because you make it more compliant, submissive, and docile. You can draw a comparison that when a man is given all this adult material and you convince the body that he's in a perpetual state of lovemaking and reproduction, you make him docile, you make him neutered, you make him submissive, you make him compliant, and then he's less likely to be combative, he's less likely to be disagreeable. And that's, you know, fundamentally a spiritual aspect of this war that we are exist in. Therapists are also individuals that benefit off excessive masturbation and adult material addiction, because it leads to depression. Also, just you know, to ground this in some more science, testosterone actually mitigates negative emotion like anxiety, like depression, and like apathy. So if you have more testosterone, you naturally have less depression. Another reason why I'm encouraging you guys to look at my videos on optimizing your testosterone, because it's crucial. Social media apps, masturbation really offsets your dopamine receptors. Doom scrolling, Reels, TikTok is the result of that. And you can see how the negative emotion comes into play there. If your testosterone is low, you're looking for dopamine elsewhere in some of these very short form bursts of pleasure. And also the sex toy industry being another one here after the novelty of just vanilla self-pleasuring gets too boring, let's say. I wanted to finish off on a story for our friend here. It's about to get real, and really how this journey allows you to become the man that you need to be. By desexualizing your mind, you become the man that you need to be. As of today, I'm roughly a month away from reaching 1 year of celibacy. I got back from Friday night sparring at my MMA gym, and I'm sitting here in my living room in complete silence. I can't help but feel a tremendous sense of gratitude for whoever or whatever that guided me on this path. For my maker, I simply want to express my deepest gratitude. When you carry gratitude like a talisman against your heart, you affirm to the universe that you're in a state of having. And when you're constantly in a state of having, the universe is always in a constant state of giving. My life has transformed in such a drastic way that I could not have dreamed up my current circumstance just a year ago. Last February, I just broke up with my ex. I didn't really have a consistent source of income. It was not really clear what I wanted to do with my life. Although I'm currently enrolled in an MBA program, I just felt like I had no control. As I stand here today, I wrapped up last year with a 6-figure in trading profits. I had traded a couple years back, but after some drastic drawdowns, I decided to step away. And I managed to achieve that in just 6 months' time. My diet, my fitness, my mental health are all in their peak forms. I lead a quiet life. No drugs, no alcohol, no smoking, no partying, no girls, no dating. And I absolutely love it. Spiritually, I can't really put into words how I feel. But I simply feel like I understand more, and I am flowing with life's natural current. It's an interesting way to describe it. I often describe it as a lightening of your karmic debt, because you're not weighing yourself down with more karma in the form of negative emotions like shame and apathy when you rid yourself of these things in your life. And When that starts to happen, it's like you move through the grooves of lives with more lubrication, pause, with more fluidity, with more grace. So you're no longer catching yourself on the rough edges. You're sliding through with ease in that respect. I really sat down and thought about the term consciousness. To me, the term means to be aware both internally and externally, to know the truth, or to do away with the false ego relative views. Lately, I have been trying to act from the stream of consciousness that is me, not simply my ego or myself. I am the stream of consciousness, and I must act from this stream. To me, this is the key to being present in the moment. I will not go into further detail into this discussion as it could get long-winded. Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong person here as well in that respect. But I get it. I mean, you're describing what the Taoists would call walking the Tao. You have the yin-yang model. You have the yin on the left-hand side. You have the yang on the right-hand side. You have the feminine, you have the masculine. And the Tao, where you find God, is in the middle, is walking the divisions between the masculine and the feminine. And the Hindus would call that being in yoga. Yoga doesn't mean this Western concept of different asanas, of downward dog, of the mountain pose. Yoga means union. It means togetherness. It means uniting the polarity of the cosmic field. It means uniting yin and yang, masculine and feminine. And in that way, there's an end to dualism, and you find flow, you find God, you find consciousness, whatever you want to call it. That is God. That is flow. That is where we all want to go. Socially, I feel the attention everywhere I go. People look at me as if I am some unicorn. I used to be uncomfortable with the looks, and due to that defensive mindset, I would set out closed off vibes. This is still a work in progress, but I've become more relaxed. I'm not so guarded in my energy anymore. And for what is given to me should be given back. I am simply a medium, a conduit. I love that. I love that word conduit. You're a conduit for God. You are, I recently, one of my favorite, I know I don't probably like talking about video games on this channel, but one of my favorites is God of War. And there's a DLC of, Valhalla, and Kratos is coming to terms with this idea of being a king. And one of the ways he describes being a king is being in service. And I love that phrase. It's being in service of God, right? A king isn't to rule, to proclaim, to lead, to take. A king doesn't do that. A king is in service. A king is in service of God. It is a conduit to allow God to speak through. To be a king is to have the greatest responsibility in the world and be a conduit for God's message in human form. In that way, you become an aspect of God. Flawed in your human nature, yes, but your values, your virtues have to be congruent and aligned with that God. As many others have mentioned, SR is a tool, not the end all and be all, but what a tool it is. As I sit here, I can feel myself entering another stage. I'm not certain what the stage will be like, but whatever it is, I can feel that something is massive. 555, here we go. I just want to double down on SR being a tool, because I think, I know SR can become another religion, and I'm pleased that the top comment on this post is what brought me to this. As others have mentioned, SR is a tool, not the end all and be all. My brother was on the edge of ending himself. He was depressed, confused, and stressed. His romantic life was a mess. His career was going bad, and he had lost all hope. I told him, try these things for a week, and I promise you it will be better. So he started SR, meditation, yoga, journaling, sports, food regime, and shadow work. 2 months later, he is shining. He is so happy. His mood is great. His career is good. His social and romantic life are bliss. We all know that the dark days are over, and now full of love and joy, and SR is fuel for that. The same way he might choose to share his love with a new partner in the more, let's say, modern traditional sense, and I don't believe that should be necessarily demonized. This is a valuable tool, but I'm interested to get your opinion on perhaps the latter point. Celibacy, is it the end all and be all? Is there a happy medium between marrying modern ideas of sharing and showing affection and love with the old and esoteric truth of continents? These aren't theories, these are facts. Speak soon.